Nick, thank you so much for having me to your studio today. I love your work.
Thank
You
you so
are
much.
an illustrator, a graphic artist, and as someone who's not an artist, I can't wrap my brain around how you do such detailed, beautiful work. Let's start at the beginning. When did you fall in love with art?
Really from the very beginning. There's not a time that I can remember that I, wasn't drawing. My parents were very encouraging when I was growing up, so I just kind of started then.
And when did you feel like you wanted to make this your life's work?
I remember a moment, I think in 8th grade. I was spending a lot of time just up in my room copying my favorite album covers. And after a while doing that, I was messing around with typography and stuff like that. And that's kind of when I realized that this is maybe something that I really want to do.
So when did computers come into the scene? When did you start doing some of your work with the help of the tool that is the computer?
Tool is a good word for it, I think. A lot of people think that, if you're doing art on the computer, it's not really art, but it is a tool, just like a paintbrush or a pen or whatever. I got my first laptop before I started college, so I think that that's kind of when things started.
Yeah. Now, did you go to school for art?
I did, yeah. I went to St. Francis for graphic design.
They turn out some really good graphic designers.
They really do. After high school, I really wanted to leave Fort Wayne, just because I had grown up here, lived here my whole life, and I was ready to get out for a little while. So I was a little disappointed at first, honestly, that I had to, stay in town and go to St. Francis, but I'm so glad I did. It's such a great program over there.
So what do you think it was about that program specifically that really allowed you to grow as an artist?
I would say the professors. As an art student, I had to take painting, drawing, illustration, ceramics, sculpture, all that kind of stuff. And every single professor there, whatever they're teaching, was so good at what they do and so good at teaching it to us that, and I'm also still kind of Facebook friends with some of them, even real life friends with some of them to this day too. So
now, having to try all those different mediums, did you ever feel like you were falling in love with a different type of art, or did you stay the course?
Actually, when I first started, I was a studio art major for my first semester. I really wanted to be like a drawer, for lack of a better word. I just wanted to draw.
Yeah.
And actually, when I have a few tattoos, when I got my first one, I was talking to the tattoo artist, and he kind of recommended, drawing is great, but you can also do a little bit of that in graphic design, and it's also a much more marketable field as well. And so I looked into it and never looked back from there.
Wow. So how hard is it to balance the artwork you do for work and what you do for pleasure? Is it hard to find a happy medium?
I love working for clients. I love my job at the library. But it is increasingly harder these days to make the time for myself.
Yeah. How do you infuse yourself into work for clients who I'm sure have their own vision?
They do a lot of the time, but also a lot of the time clients will seek me out just because they've seen my work before. They know what I'm good at, what I can do, and so there's kind of a good balance there of them seeing what they want in me and them also kind of having a vision for it.
How do you describe your aesthetic? When these clients are seeking you out because they can tell what you do, what do you do?
I would call myself first and foremost an illustrator. When a lot of people hear that word, they think, children's books illustrator, but
Sure.
It's so much more than that. I consider it, drawing, but in a marketable way, basically. So, I do a lot of heavily detailed stuff. There's a lot of lettering, but also I've done work, where it's branding for a logo for a client, and that has to be a lot simpler. So it's hard to say what I would describe myself as, but it's a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the detail. How long does one of your really detailed pieces generally take from start to finish?
It can take a while, especially because it's difficult to sit down and work on something like that for hours at a time. I got to take breaks and stretch, and I learned that the hard way when I was in college. I had a little bit of a carpal tunnel scare and had to wear a brace for a little while, and I still put that on occasionally when I know I'm going to be doing a lot of drawing.
Yeah. See, I was thinking that you were implying that it was mentally taxing, but it's physically taxing.
Physically taxing more so, I would say. I kind of like it when I can, just hunch over my desk and get in the zone and draw for a little while, but yeah, I did learn kind of the hard way that I had to take breaks there.
I think some of your work that I love the most is social commentary. How deliberate is that?
I would say very deliberate.
Yeah.
I see it as my role in the world as an artist and as a white man who's had it pretty easy my whole life, to kind of do what I can to make the world a better place and make other people's lives easier in whatever small way I can.
I love that you can make beautiful work that still has purpose.
Has a message.
Yeah, has a message. Tell me how you have grown and evolved as an illustrator, as a graphic artist, maybe since college, but maybe even just since you've been working professionally.
I see it as I took a pretty big jump after college. I started at an advertising agency. So, I was doing a lot of billboards and web ads and stuff like that. So it wasn't exactly my forte, and especially not something that I was especially experienced in. So I just kind of got thrown into it and kind of had to learn the hard way. But I learned a lot there. I'm what I would consider a Photoshop expert now because of that, which is a pretty great skill to have. So I see that as a big growth point for me.
What is the best part of your work, whether it is making art for yourself or for your job?
The best part, I think, is when it's done.
Okay.
I say that kind of jokingly, but also it's really cool to see something that I've been working on for weeks or months. Sitting at my desk just drawing. Seeing that on a T-shirt or a record cover or something is a pretty awesome feeling.
Let's talk about record covers. I'm a huge James Taylor fan, and so I was kind of geeking out when I read that you were going to play a pivotal role. I'll let you explain it.
How that happened, there's a company, Live Nation. You think of them for tickets. They also help different touring artists put their merch packages together. So a few years ago, they reached out to me for a different artist, and I've done work with Live Nation for a few different artists over the years. And earlier this year, they reached out to me to do some stuff for James Taylor's upcoming tour, which is just a dream come true. It's James Taylor. Everybody knows James Taylor.
Stinkin' Taylor.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. How do you even get noticed, seen by Live Nation?
I kind of think I just lucked out. I have my own website. I think that one of the art directors there saw a piece that he really liked, that he kind of wanted me to adapt for this certain band back in the day, and they reached out and I signed some W-2s, and they've contacted me 4 or 5 times since then to do stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you even, when that happens, can you even believe that that's your life?
It's super surreal, especially at first. I get an email, they're like, hey, do you want to do some work for this band that everybody loves? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Of course I do. Yes. So what's next? I mentioned that, the world is crazy right now, and I feel like art is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
So do you have big plans, or are you taking it day by day?
A little bit of both. I have some hopes and dreams. I would really, really love to do a mural here in Fort Wayne. I've had a couple close opportunities. Nothing has come to fruition yet, but I'm hoping that that's on the horizon. I've got a few projects going here and there. There's one that's still in the beginning stages for a science fiction book cover, which I'm really excited to do. I've never done a book cover before, so I think that'll be really cool.
You mentioned that your favorite part is when a piece is done. Is it always clear when it's done? Because your stuff is so detailed. I can
Yes.
imagine you could take forever just putting a little bit more.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's never really done until it's past the deadline. I would definitely keep working on, especially the heavily detailed stuff. I would keep tweaking it forever.
Wow.
But you
Well-
know, it's a small studio in here. I'd probably run out of space eventually.
That would be the best studio ever. One just floor to ceiling
Just
covered.
packed.
Yes, I love that. I love your work. I hope that Live Nation continues beating down your door because your work needs to be everywhere.
Thank you.
And
Hope so,
I can't wait to see your mural because I know that that's next.
I hope so.
Thank you again for having me, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Arts in Focus on PBS Fort Wayne is funded in part by the Our Foundation and the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne.